to introduce our Sunday morning breakfast speaker. Our speaker will be Amity Dolby. She's an outspoken pro-life and anti-war Catholic libertarian activist who works to unite people around human dignity, peace, and self-governance as shared political principles. An expression of liberty with soul, Amity's work blends spiritual conviction with government skepticism, encouraging people to think, question, and take responsibility to building the kind of society that honors human dignity at every level. Amity is a lifetime member of the National Libertarian Party, currently serving on the comms team, and has had several state and local affiliate board positions. You can find her on X at AmityLee13, sparking conversation and influencing policies that matter. So with no further ado, here's Amity Lee.
Thanks, Kara. First, I want to thank the convention committee, especially Mimi and Kara, for inviting Free and I out here. We've had a blast in your beautiful state. We really appreciate getting to meet online friends that we've never met in person. Kara especially, we've been friends for several years now. And talking to all of you about liberty issues, it's really fun to go to the different states and meet new people. It is Sunday morning, but I promise I'm not going to be preachy. I do want to begin with a question, though, that's bothered me for most of my life. How is it that someone can say they're pro-life and then cheer when bombs drop? How is it that we can march for the unborn, but then wave flags for foreign wars? How is it that we can call ourselves promoters of human dignity and then see millions of brown people over in sandboxes killed and cheer? That's the tension that I've had for years. So I've always believed that you judge a society the way it values human life. I grew up around extremely conservative people, good people, people who sincerely believed that they were defending life. They would passionately defend the unborn, and then without hesitation, call foreign wars patriotic. They saw no contradiction, but I did. And I could never quite reconcile it, because if life is sacred, it's sacred everywhere. It can't be sacred in the womb and then disposable on the battlefield or in prison. It can't depend on geography, age, nationality, whether the government has declared someone an enemy or undocumented. For me, that realization didn't begin as a political position, but as a moral restlessness, a nagging awareness that something didn't add up. Later, when I discovered libertarianism, I found language that I had been wrestling with all along. It's the core tenet of the Libertarian Party, the non-aggression principle. The idea is that no one, including the state, has the right to initiate force on another human being. And I began to see some things more clearly. The reality is that if we believe that principle, we must apply it consistently to the unborn, to the prisoners, to civilians overseas, to the elderly, to the disabled, to the undocumented, to the vulnerable, from the womb to the tomb. So there's this philosophy called the consistent ethic of life. At its core, it asks a very simple question. If human life has inherent dignity, why do we allow the government to decide when it doesn't? Because history has given us a sober answer. The largest institutional killer in human history is not some crime syndicate, it's the state. This should make anyone who cares about life reflect on the power we give to our government. Now, let me be clear. This isn't a talk about scoring points with internal party debate. It's about coherence. It's about asking ourselves whether we're willing to defend life consistently, even when it's uncomfortable, even when it challenges our tribe. And yes, that means we have to talk about abortion. But it also means we have to talk about war and capital punishment and state-sponsored assisted suicide. Because if we're going to call ourselves defenders of life, defenders of the non-aggression principle, we have to decide something first. Is it sacred because it's convenient, or is it sacred because it's human? So this morning, I want to explore what it looks like to take that question seriously. We have our joker over here as the other part of the couple, but I tend to get a little serious sometimes, so bear with me, don't let me lose you. But we should take a look at this through restraint and humility, and about what power, especially state power, can and cannot be trusted to do. If life is precious, then our principles must protect it everywhere, and that's where I'd like to begin. So let's go ahead and address the elephant in the room. I'll get through it fast. Stay with me. Abortion. So let's be honest, we label people. We heard Richard Ryder say last night, never presuppose your allies or your adversaries. I acknowledge that there are well-intentioned people on all sides of this debate. We aren't going to solve it with internal party discussions. I'm pro-life, but I don't believe that criminalizing women who have abortions is the right or effective approach. Punitive laws don't address the reason why women seek abortions, which include fear, financial stress, social pressure, coercion. Lawfare would make those situations worse. So some people ask me, if you're pro-life, why don't you want to criminalize abortion? And actually, if you would have asked me this 2 years ago, I stood on the national stage at the LNC convention, and I promoted that if the government must exist, then it must protect life at every stage. And since then, I have asked myself, take that to its logical conclusion. What does that mean for the woman if you're going to criminalize something? How does that affect someone who is just going through a really tough time? So from a libertarian perspective, we should want to avoid unnecessary state force. Criminalizing women's choices expands government into deeply personal medical decisions and often punishes people in crisis rather than addressing root causes. Protecting life should not be defaulting to incarceration or other punishment as a first solution. A libertarian approach distinguishes between moral persuasion and state punishment. One can affirm the value of the unborn life with still recognizing that broad criminal penalties may be ineffective, unjust, or counterproductive in achieving goals of protecting life. The libertarian objective is always about power to the individual and to limit state power. We should be addressing the underlying drivers: financial hardship, lack of childcare, unstable relationships, and social pressure. Reducing barriers to support through private charity, community networks, mutual aid, churches, civil society aligns with the libertarian principle that solutions should arise from voluntary institutions rather than coercive state action. So, what about justice for the unborn? I know that libertarians debate when rights begin, but even those among us who believe that life begins at conception, there's a recognition that justice should be proportionate and realistic. Punishing vulnerable women may not restore life, and it may instead deepen harm without preventing future abortions. So what solution do I envision from the government without expanding control of individual rights? I'll say it one more time. The libertarian objective is always about power for the individual and to limit state power. So what I'm about to say may sound off topic, but stick with me here. Everybody can finish this phrase for me. Taxation is, right, taxation is theft. So I'd like to see a tax policy that allows individuals to keep what they earn so that they can be compassionate and giving and charitable people, like most people I know are. And they'll have significantly more resources to give to organizations who support unwed mothers, women in crisis pregnancy, assistance, for people seeking alternatives to abortion. Crisis pregnancy centers are an invaluable resource for women when they don't know where to turn. As a matter of fact, when I had my first child, I was an unwed mother. And I had well-meaning people around me who were pro-life, but being close to home, they would encourage me to have an abortion. And I didn't want to. And so I had family members take me to a crisis pregnancy center thinking that they would encourage me to give my child up for adoption. And there was a wonderful lady there, and she encouraged me and gave me the confidence that if I did want to keep my child and did not have the support at home or what have you, that there would be resources out there for me. I didn't end up needing those resources, but it gave me the confidence to keep my baby. And he's a wonderful man now. He's a veteran, he's a musician, he's a great husband. So when we keep what we earn, we can steer our resources to programs such as these. But adoption laws are also extremely prohibitive and cost prohibitive. There's families that want to stand in the gap. And so I would encourage advocating for two policy changes: tax elimination and less government regulation surrounding adoption. I think this would cause a significant drop in abortion without creating laws that penalize women. More so, simply making it illegal is not addressing the root causes. So I mentioned in my intro that to be a consistent defender of life, an anti-war position is the only option. If life is sacred, it's sacred everywhere. I'm sure many of you remember after 9/11, George W. Bush decided to go start a lot of war over in Iraq. The shock and awe we all saw in the mainstream media. I was a young adult, and I was watching this thinking, okay, I didn't think Saddam Hussein had anything to do with flying planes into our towers, and yet we're going over to, blow up Saddam Hussein, and all these people were dying over there. Most people, including myself, could not even pick out Iraq on a map. And it really got me thinking about this consistency about the whole life issue. The state is the largest institutional killer in human history. I'm going to give you 3 stats that should shock anyone who believes in the non-aggression principle. Governments were responsible for over 262 million deaths in the 20th century alone. That would be comparable to every adult in the United States today being wiped out. US post 9/11 wars have cost the American taxpayer $10 trillion, and millions have died. We're talking about our service members. We're talking about foreign military, people who are conscripted for causes that they probably don't even believe in or know what they're fighting for. We're talking about innocent women and children, Christians, Muslims, all faith, no faith. People are just trying to live their lives until the bombs started dropping. Most recently, the Israeli government, with US financing and support, has admitted to at least 74,000 Palestinians have been killed in Gaza since October 7th, 2003. This genocide mainly affects women and children. Those who survived are left disabled, dismembered, homeless, their infrastructure wiped out. So what specific measures should we call on our lawmakers to adopt? Libertarianism rejects mass violence as a tool of policy, right? So we should be loud and even annoying activists, thorns in the sides of our representatives. We need to make calls to our elected officials and protest virtually and in person. A lot of us have large social media followings. We are able to speak to our elected officials in real time on social media platforms. I have a lot of interaction with friendly people like Thomas Massey, but I also have back and forth, really adversarial conversations with other representatives who are neocons and love funding foreign wars. So we can be loud, we should be. Even if we don't have libertarians in federal office, we should be advocating for our government to stop funding and participating in the endless wars. And this is especially true with nuclear capabilities that threaten human eradication on an unimaginable scale. I don't know about you, but I have imagined the horror on many occasions what could happen if one of these countries with nuclear capabilities just got sick and tired of all the rhetoric coming out of the White House and decided enough was enough. I don't want to know what happens in that situation. Our government should be laser focused on peace and diplomacy. If they won't listen to us, we need to push for candidates who aren't neocons and can't be bought by foreign lobbyists. So, moving on to capital punishment. I'm going to say it yet again, because I've said this a few times. The libertarian objective is always about power to the individual and limit to state power. So capital punishment can't be trusted to a corrupt government when more humane avenues are available to protect society from dangerous individuals. So why don't we trust the government to carry out capital punishment? Because the state gets it wrong way too often. One specific example that shaped my view was in my own home state of Florida. In the last 50 years, 24% of people on death row have been exonerated after further evidence. So that leaves 76% who have been executed, and it makes you wonder how many of those 76% were actually innocent and they didn't get a fair trial, or the evidence was not presented properly or suppressed. Every human life who is innocent is precious. Every human life is innocent. So some say that the death penalty saves taxpayer money. That's actually a misconception. With the lengthy trials, the appeals, the special housing, it is actually more expensive to execute someone than it is to house them in prison for life. Life imprisonment without parole still protects society from violent individuals while avoiding the irreversible mistake of potentially killing someone who was innocent. So we have one more attribute to the consistent ethic of life, and that's government involvement in assisted suicide. Euthanasia is becoming really popular around the world, in Canada, in Europe, and it's creeping into the US as well. This raises serious ethical concerns. California has a right to die law, also known as the End of Life Option Act. You may be more familiar with it than I am. While it protects doctors from criminal liability, involving lawmakers in end-of-life medical decisions opens the door to potential government overreach. As government involvement in healthcare expands, and they like to get their noses in every little thing, That raises the concern that they may start coercing end-of-life decisions for the disabled, for the elderly, for the mentally ill. You've heard me say it enough this morning, so you can probably say it with me. The libertarian objective is always power to the individual and to limit state power. Simply stated, medical decisions should remain between a patient and their doctor. I saw this firsthand. In 2017, my dad got cancer. He and my mom were enjoying retirement in Southern Florida. I was still living in Virginia. And my mom has Alzheimer's, and he was her primary caregiver. So they moved up to Virginia to live with me so that I could care for my dad while he went through his cancer treatment. And he died peacefully in a hospital bed in my living room. Many doctors wanted me to put him away in a nursing home or, gave us opinions that we really didn't want to make. Medicare makes decisions on what they pay for. But ultimately, we found doctors who were, who listened to our wishes. And the most important thing was having a doctor and a patient and a family decision that did not involve government coercion. So, having served as my elderly parents' caretakers, I believe compassionately in helping people die with dignity and not having the state steer that influence. So all these tenets, abortion, war, capital punishment, euthanasia, encompasses my broader philosophy on dealing with defending life, which is protecting the most vulnerable among us. Our freedoms are closely tied to the well-being of those with the least power, the elderly and the preborn, the hungry and the homeless, the undocumented neighbors, those struggling with addiction and the mentally ill. Our non-aggression principle affirms that every person bears inherent dignity. Created in the image of God, no life is disposable. No public policy should reflect anything that contradicts that truth. The government should just stay out of the way. The libertarian objective is always about power to the individual and to limit the state power. A truly free society protects the innocent, not primarily through government force, but through charity, mutual aid, strong communities, and we recognize that the intrinsic value of every human being is important. As a Catholic, my convictions are rooted in deeply held Christian beliefs, but regardless of anyone's religious beliefs here, I think most libertarians can all agree on this core principle. The less government involved in our wallets and our private lives, the better off humanity will be. Thanks, and I'm happy to take any questions. Yes.
Thank you for your eloquence. Thank you for your principles in communicating to us all about, for example, life in the fall is fully as important as a life in California.
Amen. Thank you.
Sorry. Are you familiar with the term democide?
Democide? I am not.
Look it up in Wikipedia. Basically, Professor, I think it's Professor thank you, documented the death by government throughout the 20th century. I
262 million.
believe it's documented, which nations did the killing.
Oh, okay.
Obama put out a book a year adding up all the death by government. Democide means death by government. And his last book, I think it was his last book, the Blue Book, had it at about for the 20th century, 200 to 400,000, no, 200 to 400 million people been killed by government
Mm-hmm.
in the 20th century.
It's awful.
Romo was very good. He died not too long, but great peace activist out of Hawaii.
Thank you. Yes?
It sounds like the beginning of an argument that this is not. I just wanted to know, do you support prohibiting medical assistance in death?
I do not. I think that medical choices should be between a doctor and their patient. Thanks, guys.
Thank you so much, Amity. You guys, I think we start business around 8:25. And just one more time, can we give it up for both Amity and Free for being such a huge part of our convention this year? Thank you, guys. We'll see you in business.